Welcome to Shas Illuminated. Please enjoy the following shiur.
We're beginning tonight's shiur in the beginning of Chelek Beis. We are on page Beis in Chelek Beis, Siman Kuf Chav Ches, Dinei Nesias Kapayim. So the Mechaber says in Sif Aleph, Ein Nesias Kapayim b'pachos me'asara. You cannot do Nesias Kapayim with less than 10 people. V'hakohanim me'aminyan. And the Kohanim who are doing the Nesias Kapayim count towards the minyan of 10. The Ramah says, "Ve'ein lazar lisa kapov afilu im kohanim acherim." A non-Kohen cannot duchen even if he is together with the Kohanim. That's beperek beis the ksuvos. The zar over ba'asei. As we'll see in the Mishabura exactly what the asei is, but a non-Kohen who duchens, even if he joins Kohanim, that is considered being over an asei. V'tosas perek kol kisvei Tosas and Shabbos says, "Lo yoda ri ma iser yesh v'zar ha'ola." The Ri says he doesn't know what Isser Azar is over by being Ola Teduchen. The Efsher De'im Kohanim Acherim Shari. And he comes out, says the Ramah, and says it's possible that with other Kohanim it should be Mutter, V'tzarech Ian. And we'll see all the details in the Mishabura. But actually, before we start the Mishabura, I want to begin with the Bir Halacha. So if you look at the Bir Halacha, it gives a little bit of an introduction. Kosav b'sefer charedim, mitzvahs aseh levarech Kohen es Yisrael. It's a mitzvah aseh for a Kohen to give a bracha to Klal Yisrael. Shenemar kosav varechu es b'nei Yisrael. As the pasuk says, so you should bless the b'nei Yisrael. The Yisrael ha'omdim ponim keneged pnei ha'kohanim b'shtika, and the Yisraelim who are standing across from the Kohanim and they're being silent, umechavnim libam lekabel berchosam kidvar Hashem, and their kavanah in their heart is to receive the bracha as a dvar Hashem. Heim nami bechlal hamitzvah. They, the Yisraelim who are across from the Kohanim, listening quietly to the bracha and accepting it, they are also included in the mitzvah. Ad kan Lashono, that is the end of the Lashon of the Sefer Charedim. Ve'heviyu ha'achronim, the Achronim bring it down. Now the first thing to discuss over here is, what does he mean in the Sefer Charedim? They're also b'chlal the mitzvah. The Yisraelim who are listening to the bracha are also included in the mitzvah. So if you have the Dirshu Mishabura, if not, we have some copies, if not we'll get more copies. But if you look in the Dirshu Mishabura in the notes, in note number 8, he brings out a machlokas in the Achronim what it means in the Sefer Charedim that the Yisraelim that are standing quietly across the Kohanim and receiving the bracha, they're also included in the bracha. So he writes, "Bebir divrei ha-Sefer Charedim nechleku ha-Achronim." The Achronim argue of what the Sefer Charedim means. The Haflah says, "Shenokat ha-Yisraelim ha-Mizbarchim mekaimim mitzvahs aseh mamish." The Haflah understands it very literally that the Yisraelim that are listening and receiving the bracha of the Kohanim are mamish being mekayim and mitzvahs aseh. V'im einam rotzim lehisbarich, and if they don't want to receive the bracha, they walk out over in Isra aseh. They're actually over in Isra aseh. He takes the Sefer Charedim very literally. Me'idach, on the other hand, the Shas and Shuvas Mari Asad writes, "Shebevadei ein mitzvahs aseh al ha-Yisrael lehisbarich." There's no real mitzvahs aseh for the Yisrael to receive the bracha from the Kohen. Ela sheim misayim bidei ha-kohanim l'kayim es mitzvasam. It's the opposite. It's the Yisraelim who are just assisting the Kohanim to fulfill their mitzvah daraisa. But there's no actual mitzvah aseh for Yisrael to receive the bracha. Kevan shel kohanim tzrichim osam lebracha. Since the Kohanim need to bless someone, so you being the someone are helping the Kohanim fulfill their mitzvah. V'im rotzim ha-Yisraelim lehisbarech hareim b'chlal mitzvah. If the Yisraelim want to receive the bracha, so then they're included in the mitzvah. Aval im einam rotzim lehisbarech ein over in b'isra aseh. But if they opt out, they're not over in Isra aseh. So there's a machlokas in the Achronim whether the Sefer Charedim really means that there's a mitzvah daraisa for the Yisraelim also, or it's just that they're helping the Kohanim to fulfill their mitzvah. In note number 9, he points out on the last words that the Bir Halacha wrote that the Achronim bring down this Sefer Charedim. He says that according to the Sefer Charedim, it would turn out that if you're in the middle of davening, you're silent Shemona Esrei, and you're Yisrael, you should stop and listen to the Brachas Kohanim, because you want to fulfill your mitzvah aseh. He says, "Achein lahafsik be'emtza tfilas lachash b'shtika." To stop in the middle of your silent Shemona Esrei quietly, Kedei l'shmoa birchas Kohanim, Rav Yoshev says, she'ein lasos kein. One should not do this. Kevan shemimashmos kol harishonim shelo hiskiru sheyesh mitzvah lehisbarich. Since the mashmos of all the rishonim that they don't bring down this idea of the Sefer Charedim that the mitzvah to be blessed. Nira she'sovrim she'ein mitzvah badavar. It appears from the rishonim that there is really no mitzvah badavar, and therefore Rav Yoshev says you should not stop even in the middle of your silent Shemona Esrei to listen to the bracha because it's not really a mitzvah aseh. I want to see one more Bir Halacha before we go to the Mishabura. We don't usually do this, but here you'll see why we're doing it. The next Bir Halacha says, Ein Nesias Kapayim, on that which the Mechaber said there's no Nesias Kapayim less than 10. So what's the reason? Why do you need a minyan for Nesiyas Kapayim? It's a machlokes. Hatam mishum du davar shebekdusha. The first opinion is a davar shebekdusha, like Kaddish, Kedusha, Baruch Hu, you need a minyan. So to Birchas Kohanim, it's a davar shebekdusha. V'haran kosav de lo mikri davar shebekdusha ki'im Kaddish u Kedusha Baruch Hu. The Ran argues and says it's not a davar shebekdusha unless it's Kaddish, Kedusha, or Baruch Hu. Birchas Kohanim is not a davar shebekdusha. So why do you need 10? Umadet tzarech asara b'Nesiyas Kapayim, and that which you need a minyan for Nesiyas Kapayim. Who mishum di alfinan gzeir shava. We learn it out from gzeir shava. Diksiv kosa varuchu es bnei Yisrael. The pasuk says by Birchas Kohanim, so you should bless bnei Yisrael. Ulahalon ksiv. Later on it says v'niktashti besoch bnei Yisrael. And we learn from that pasuk of besoch from the Meraglim that besoch is always going to be 10. And therefore from this gzeir shava of bnei Yisrael, we learn out that duchening needs 10 people. Va'afilu lididei rak asmachta. Even according to him, it's only an asmachta and it's midrabanan. So we have a machlokas over here. Is Nesiyas Kapayim really a davar shebekdusha, or is it learned out from Gzeir Shava that you need to have a minyan dafka, even though it's not really a davar shebekdusha? And now, if we begin the Mishnah Berurah says in Sefkatan Aleph, "V'dino b'chol davar kamo shemuvor le'el b'siman nun hey le'inyan kaddish." The rules of the minyan for duchening is like the rules that we discussed earlier by Kaddish. You look over there, who counts, who doesn't count for a minyan. V'ayin sham b'mishnah Sifkatan Lamed Gimel. Look over there in the halachas of Kaddish in Sifkatan Lamed Gimel. Masha kasavnu b'shem ha-pri megadim. That which we bring down b'shem the pri megadim. The mistapik le'inyan yoshen imitztarif. The pri megadim has a suffix. If you have 9 people that are awake and 1 person is sleeping, if that counts as a minyan for Kaddish. But if you look at note number 1 in the Dirsha Mishnah Berurah, he says, the Mavur Sham B'dvarav, the Pri Megadim says over there, Shedin Zeh Talui B'shtei Hadeos Shehevi B'bir Halacha Kan. The Pri Megadim says that the machlokes of whether a person who is sleeping can count in the minyan is talui in this machlokes in the Bir Halacha over here. Madua Tzarech Asar Nesiyas Kapayim. Why is it that you need 10 people for duchening? Sheledeya Shu Mitam Davar Shebekdusha. According to the first opinion, that's like all Dvarim Shebekdusha. Yoshen Mitzarif. Then as long as you have 10 people, the Shekhinah is there, and therefore if a person is sleeping, he will count towards the minyan just like by Kaddish. Avalodeya Shalom Dimzos Migzeir Shava, but according to the Ran that we brought down in the Bir Halacha, that it's not have a Migzeir Shava, from the pasuk of Nikdashti B'Sof B'nei Yisrael, Yitochen Sheyoshen Eino Mitzarif. It's very likely that one who is sleeping will not be able to join in and count towards the minyan. Mipnei Shetzarech Pirson B'Fnei Asara. Because it has to be something that's recognizable, that's first from the 10 people, and if a person is sleeping, he will not count in that drasha, and that Gzeir Shava of Nikdashti B'Sof B'nei Yisrael. The Yoshen Eino B'Chlal Zeh, one who is sleeping is not included in that. Ulam hataz v'apri chadash chokim. The Taz and the Pri Chadash argue. V'sovrim shem ganu davar shebekdusha ein hayoshem mitzarif. They hold that always by davar shebekdusha a yoshen, someone who is sleeping, is not mitzarif. Lamaisa, he ends off in the note. The Mishnah Berurah writes earlier that l'chatchila bevadei tzarech lahakitzo. At least l'chatchila one should wake him up. The alko panim laoro sheyeb misnanim. At the very least, you should wake him a little bit, so he's a little dozing and he's not fast asleep. So best is to wake him, but that's the machlokes over there. Continues the Mishnah Berurah in the end of the third line. Yesh omrim de'ein nesiyas kapayim ela b'makom sheyesh sefer Torah. Some say that you do not duchen unless there is a sefer Torah there. Aval rov achronim v'kimat kulam chokim al zeh. But most achronim, kimat all of them argue and say you do not need a sefer Torah. Why would one think that you need a sefer Torah for duchening? So if you look at note number 2, he explains, V'tama dover nisbar b'shas neshulas chikri leiv. Shekevan shebishas uposkim husker shakohanim olim lisa kapeim beduchen. Since the Gemara mentions, and the poskim mention that the Kohanim go up to the duchen, to the platform to duchen, V'duchen hu habima shelifnei ha'heichel she'asefer Torah bo. The platform is the platform in front of where the Sefer Torah is. Mashma mikach she'nesias kapayim hi b'makom she'yesh heichel v'sefer Torah. The fact that you go up to the duchen in order to do Nesiyas Kapayim, it's mashma that you're going up to the platform in front of the Sefer Torah, so it's mashma there is a Sefer Torah there. Ubadas ha'chokim kasa, but those who argue, he explains, she'b'shas naftu lashon zu mipnei she'al pi rov hayu ha'kohanim olim l'duchen. That's just because that's the place where the Kohanim normally went up to duchen. Ach lo b'bnei she'davar zeh ma'akev. Not that there's a chiyuv that you could only duchen with the Sefer Torah there. It just used to be, practically, that's where they went up to duchen. But not because you have to actually duchen in that spot, and you actually have to have the Sefer Torah there while you are duchening. And then he points out, Umeduyo kaloshan lalos laduchen, and that expression that the Gemara and the Poskim bring down about going up to the platform, the Eish Avram writes, Sheyesh lahader ulahakbid shamidas hakohanim tiyah al mokom hagavoa miritzvos beis haknesses. So the Eish Avram brings down that there is an inyan that the kohanim should be raised up over the regular ground of the shul. Dugmas amidas hakohanim beis hamikdash, just like the kohanim were in the beis hamikdash, shahayis al mokom gavoa, that they were over a raised place. The cost of our Pri Megadim she'achshav ha'minogu she'akohanim odim al madregos aron hakodesh. The Pri Megadim says the minog nowadays, as we know in yeshiva and other places, that they go up the stairs by the aron, and that's where the kohanim duchen. But that's because the Gemara uses this expression of going up to the duchen. But it's not so pashut that you have to actually have a Sefer Torah there. That is the machlokas, and most postim say that you do not need to have a Sefer Torah there. Continues the Mishnah Berurah in the 5th line. Yesh omrim demi sheba v'omar kohen ani. There are those who say that a person who shows up in shul and says, I am a Kohen, I'm going to Duchen, Neman Lisa Kapav, he is believed to Duchen, V'chein HaMinog, that is the Minog. Someone walks into shul and says, I'm a Kohen, we believe him and we allow him to Duchen. And in note number 3, he explains why a person is believed to say he's a Kohen to Duchen. Ubetam Adavar Kostav Beis Shmuel, the Beis Shmuel explains, Shekevan she'ein lo hana mizeh, since he doesn't really get any benefit out of Duchening, maybe a little shkayach afterwards, but no real hana comes out of Duchening. Ein choshishin shema yasa iser. So we're not worried, as we're going to see, and we mentioned before, we'll see shortly, that a zar, a non-Kohen who goes up, he's actually doing an iser, so he doesn't get any hana out of it, so there's no yetzahara to do an aveira that you're not going to get any hana, and therefore if he says he's a Kohen, we believe him. The Pri Megadim adds on to this, sha'af she'im olek she'eino Kohen over b'aseh, even though by going up, when you're not a Kohen, you're over an aseh, mikom makom kevan she'eino machshil b'zeh acherim. He's not harming anyone else by going up there. So malonu v'lavono, so why should we be concerned if he wants to do an aveira? Even if he's not a Kohen, he wants to do it, it doesn't hurt us if he goes up there, and therefore we don't stop him. Ulakach yesh lamino, therefore we believe him. That's the first reason. He gets no benefit from doing it, so therefore the Beis Shmuel says we believe him. He has no reason to lie, there's no hana that comes out of it. Reason number 2.
Even if he's the only one?
That's a good question. Alex is asking even if he's the only one. L'chora, either way, he has the bracha levatal, but it doesn't affect us. It still doesn't affect us. Correct, doesn't affect us. And the second reason brought down for the kaf hachayim is shekol davar ha'asui l'hisbarer. Anything that's efshel avarer, a guy just moved from New York to Connecticut. He says I'm a Kohen, so we can just easily make a phone call to New York from the neighborhood he's from to find out if he's a Kohen. It's efshel avarer, and therefore we assume a person's not going to lie if it's efshel avarer. To that he adds on that if a person moves from somewhere where there's no frum people, a guy moved from Kalamazoo where there's no one to call who has namonos, if he's a Kohen or not, so then he wouldn't necessarily believe. This second answer is only true if the person moved from New York, from a frum community, so he's not going to lie and say he's a Kohen over here when he knows we can just simply call and find out, and therefore those are the 2 reasons that if a person comes and says he's a Kohen, we would actually believe him. Let's continue the Mishnah Berurah weiter. Sivkot Beis. Again, the Mechaber said that we don't do Nesiyas Kapayim with less than 10. V'hakohanim me'aminyan. The Kohanim count towards the minyan. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Lefi she'hakohanim gam kein b'chlal bracha. The Kohanim count towards the minyan because they're also included in the bracha. Midiksiv, as the pasuk says by Berachas Kohanim, Vani avarchem. Hashem says, I will bless them. Kilomar la Kohanim. Hashem is saying, I will bless the Kohanim. But it's not so pashut, V'aniva avarchem means I will bless the Kohanim. The Mishnah Berurah says later on, if you look at note number 4, he quotes the Mishnah Berurah later on, that says, V'ani avarchem, Hashem is saying that you, the Kohanim, give the bracha to Klal Yisrael, and I'll really give the bracha. I will give the bracha to the Yisraelim. It's not so pashut. The Mishnah Berurah over here is saying, V'ani avarchem is saying, I will bless the Kohanim who are blessing the Yisraelim. But if you look at note number 4, he says that later on in Sivkot and Kuf Mem Vav, we'll get to it soon, Hevi as Lashon HaRambam, Sha'posik V'ani avarchem musav al ha-Yisraelim ha-Mizbarachim epi Kohanim. That Hashem is saying, I will give the bracha to the Yisraelim who are being blessed by the Kohanim. V'chein kostav lahalon. And the Gemara in Chulin nechleku bazer Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Akiva. It's actually a machlokas tanoim. Ha'ima poslik v'ani avarchem misparish al Yisrael o al Kohanim. It's actually a machlokas tanoim who this is going on. But here the Mishnah Berurah says that it's going on the Kohanim, and that's the reason he brings down why the Kohanim can contribute towards the minyan as well, because they're included in the bracha. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, Va'afilu im rubam kohanim. Even if the minyan is majority kohanim, gam kein shaper dami, it's also okay. Kevan diyesh al kol panim Yisrael echad sheyana omen achar birchas kohanim. Since there's at least one Yisrael there who could answer amen to the bracha of the kohanim, therefore he could duchen even if it's 9 kohanim and 1 Yisrael. If you look at note number 5, he writes, Ubetam adavar kasav ataz, the Taz explains, shekevan shebirchas lakohanim nemra b'loshen yachid. Since the birchas kohanim is b'loshen yachid, yivarechacha Hashem v'yishmerecha, it's talking to an individual. Im keina afilu Yisrael echad roi lebracha. Therefore, even one Yisrael is okay, and therefore, if you have 9 kohanim, 1 Yisrael, it's also okay. What if it's all kohanim? So that's a special section of the siman that we're going to discuss later. Ubeis hakneses shekulam kohanim ayin lekamon v'sif chafei. We'll get to that in great detail when we get to sif chafei. Says the Mishnah Berurah weiter. Actually, let's see one more bir halach over here. We said you cannot duchen with less than 10 people. So the bir halacha says, Hainu afilun be'eish shehisrel hashatz lachzor hatfila. Even if when the chazan started chazar hashatz, there was 10 people there, hoyu asar bebeis hakneses, v'achakach yotzu. And then some of the minyan left in the middle of chazar hashatz. The kaimlon la'el b'siman nun heisav beis the gomrim kol hatfila. We passed in earlier that if there's a minyan there when chazar hashatz starts, you finish the whole chazar hashatz. Afilu hachi osir lisa kapayim. But you do not duchen. Duchening is not considered part of the tefillah, that if you had a minyan at the beginning, you could continue on with the duchening. Shehu inyan bifnei atzmo. Duchening is considered a separate topic from chazar hashatz. Elo shekva'u chacham betefillah. The chachamim happen to place it in tefillah, but it's not really part of the tefillah. And therefore, if you start chazar hashatz with 10, someone walks out in the middle, you can finish chazar hashatz, but you cannot duchen. However, but if you actually started the duchening with 10, the yotzu miksos and gomrin, and some left in the middle, then you can finish it, because once you're in that topic, you can finish the topic at hand, and therefore if the duchening started with 10, you can finish even though now you have less than 10. Continues the Mishnah Berurah weiter, when it's Sivkot and Gimel. We said in the Ramah, ve'ein lazar lisa kapav, a non-Kohen should not duchen. Even if he's with other Kohanim, even if he's with Kohanim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, what's the problem with a non-Kohen duchening? Diksiv ko sevarchu. The pasuk says, so you should bless. Atem v'lo zarim. So we darshan from there, you should bless, and not the zarim, not the non-Kohen, he should not bless. V'lav haba mechlal asay asay. Any lav that comes out of an asay, the Torah writes that ko sevarchu b'loshen asay, and we learn out from there, a lav that a zar can't do it, so lav haba mechal asay is in of an asay, and therefore a non-Kohen who duchens is over on an asay. V'ayin bebach shekosav didavke in the siyas kapayim. There's two things. There's one thing is saying the Birchas Kohanim, and two is putting your hands, doing the Siyas Kapayim. So the Bach says that which there's an assay for a non-Kohen to duchen, that's only if he does it together with the hands, within the Siyas Kapayim. V'afilu im lo berach mitchila asher kedishanu b'kdishoso shel Aaron v'tzivanu. Even if he didn't make the bracha beforehand, he'll still be over the assay if he's duchening together the bracha within the Siyas Kapayim. Aval im yivarech Birchas Kohanim below the Siyas Kapayim, but says the Bach, if he just does the bracha without the hands, Eino over b'aseh, he's not over on the aseh. However, as you can probably imagine, that's a machlokes. Uve prima gadol mashma the iser yesh b'chol gavni. The prima gadol argues the Bach, and he says he's over on an aseh, even if he doesn't do it in the Siyas Kapayim, he just says the bracha of Birchas Kohanim. Fine. Koslo b'sefer Mogen Giborim. The Mogen Giborim writes, the amra Torah atem v'lo zarim. That which the Torah just taught us, that it's you the Kohanim and not the zarim, not the non-Kohen. Einu rak b'miskavin lekavanas ha-mitzvah. That which we're saying is an Isra say for a Yisrael to give Birchas Kohanim, that's only if his kavanah is for the mitzvah. The Yisrael gets up there and he has kavanah for the mitzvah, Birchas Kohanim. Aval ilo mechavin klal lekavanas ha-mitzvah, but if he has no kavanah for the mitzvah at all, rak shelo laver al divrei chavero shechoshvo shu Kohen. He's just trying not to go against the wishes of his friends who thought he was a Kohen, v'omer lo alei l'duchen. A new guy moves to town, his name is Cohen, so everyone goes, no, they push him up there. So he goes up there, but he doesn't have kavanah for the mitzvah because he knows he's not a Cohen, he just doesn't want to, get into a whole conversation during shul, so he goes up there. Pshita de'ein kan isser asay klal. He's not over an isser. It's only an isser, says the Mogen Giborim, if you're going up there and you have kavanah for the mitzvah. Says the Chafetz Chaim, v'nirali, it appears to me, the kol zeh dafka l'mayda kaimalon le'el, v'simen samech zevdala, the mitzvah strichas kavana. This is only true, according to what we hold, the one opinion that we looked at Hilchos Kriyas Shema in great detail, that mitzvah strichas kavana. If you hold mitzvah strichas kavana, and he doesn't have kavana for Birchas Kohanim, he's not over the asay, because he doesn't have kavana for the mitzvah. The ilav hachi, because if not so, if you're not going in the man that says mitzvah strichas kavana, rather you're going with the man mitzvah ain't strichas kavana, eino mutter rak dafka in mechavim beferish shalol l'shem mitzvah. then it's only mutter for him to go up to duchen if he has kavanah b'dafka not to be mekayim the mitzvah. It's not enough to not have in mind to be mekayim the mitzvah. He has to have specific intention not to be mekayim the mitzvah. And then even according to the man that says mitzvahs ain't tzrichas kavanah, so a negative kavanah certainly won't work. O she'enu mechavin klal bracha v'ayim bir halacha. That's the Mogen Giborim comes out with. He says that it's only an issue when you have kavanah, and says the Chavetz Chaim, that's only true, Lefi the Man Omer, mitzvahs tzrichas kavanah. Mitzvahs lo tzrichas kavanah, even if you have no kavanah and you go up there, you're over the Isra Asay, unless you b'dafka have kavanah not to be yotzei. Now there is an interesting bir halacha over here as well, and that is, he doesn't discuss this straight up, but when we give a bracha to our children on Friday night, we say Yivarecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. So what about that? What about any time a person gives a bracha to his friend with Birchas Kohanim, if he's not a Kohen? Is he over an Isra Asay? The fact, the Bir Halacha says, the fact that we do give a bracha to our children or to our friends with Birchas Kohanim, and we're not Kohanim, should be a raya, says the Bir Halacha, that mitzvahs tzrichas kavanah. Otherwise, if mitzvahs ain't tzrichas kavanah, how are you blessing your children Friday night with Birchas Kohanim? Even if you don't have kavanah for the mitzvah, still you're over Isra Daraisa. That's the Bir Halacha says. If you look at the Bir Halacha, the Ramascha, the Zar over Ba'asei, he says, I am a Mishabura Shekasavnu Venirli the Koza Dafka Lamai the Kaimla Mitzvah Shrikas Kavana. Look what I just said in the Mishabura, that this is only true if you don't have Kavana for the mitzvah. Lefi the Bandar Mitzvah Shrikas Kavana. V'lechora lefi zeh yesh litmoa al mina ka'olam. According to this, it's a pella on the custom of the world, shenohagim levarech echad lechaver, that people give a bracha to their friends. Be'echu kohen ozar, whether you're kohen or a non-kohen. Be'eshem malava also v'loshen yivarechacha. When you're escorting him, you give a bracha. I added on, you give a bracha to your children. It's the same thing. A non-kohen giving a bracha to anyone, other yivarecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, should be a problem. The after bracha kazu hu shelo b'shas tefillah. Even though you're giving the bracha not at the time of tefillah, and the Yerushalmi is known that says lo matzinu nesiyas kapayim below tefillah. But says the Bir Halacha, lo zeu bevadei rata kanta de rabbanon dekvu b'tefillah. That's only the rabbanon, like we saw before. That's not the ikar adin. That's not part of the daraisa. The rabbanon put it in tefillah. Umidaraisa ino toli b'zeh klal. The daraisa birchas kohanim works even not during tefillah. Teida da lo tefillah gufa lo ro posim with the rabbanon. The imkain, if so, says the Bir Halacha, came in the midaraisa yotze bebracha ba'alma kishim mevarech osam afilu b'shlo b'shas tefillah al zeh amra Torah atem v'lo zarim. So heich muter l'zar levarech echad l'chaver b'loshen hazeh. The imkain yishraya minag olam l'hoda kaim la mitzvah shrichas kavana. Says the Bir Halacha l'chora, this is a raya, the mitzvah shrichas kavana, the fact that we go around as Yisraelim giving birchas kohanim to anyone, to our children, to our friends, the fact that we're doing it, the only answer is that we don't have kavanah. If you don't have kavanah, you have to say you're going to the man omer mitzvah shrichas kavanah. But if the man omer mitzvah lo shrichas kavanah, so even without kavanah you're being over this daraisa. So he has two ways out of it. He says ulai yesh lomar detama minog mishum desfilu kabach. Maybe we're going like the Bach, which we just mentioned in this Mishabura. The Dafka b'prisas yadayim over Hazar ba'asei. We just saw the Machogas, the Bach, and then Primogadon, the Bach says you're only over the Isra Asei if you say Brachas Kohanim with the hand motions, with the Nesiyas Kapayim. When we bless our children Friday night, or whatever minhag he's talking about, when we say it to our friends, we're not doing the Nesiyas Kapayim, and therefore we're relying on the Bach, that there would be no Isra Asei. That only works to feel the Bach, not to feel the Primogadon. And then he says another great answer, and he connects, the notes connected to Sfiyas Omer beautifully, Mamish Halacha L'maisa. Inami, another possibility to get out of this. The cave in the Tiknu Rabbanan Shalo Lisa Kapayim below Tefillah. Since the Rabbanan established and the Siyas Kapayim is only during davening, Shuv Mi Shomer Psukim Elu Shal Birchas Kohanim below Tefillah. From then on, anyone who says the Psukim of Birchas Kohanim not during Tefillah, whether he's a Kohen or Yisrael, Havei K'mechavim B'ferish Shalo L'Kayim B'zeh Mitzvahs Birchas Kohanim. Since the Chazal established that we do Birchas Kohanim during davening, when you bless your children Friday night, or you say it to your friend, or you didn't malava him, so the stam, it's automatically assumed as if you have kavanah not to be yotzei. And therefore it could be even the Fidam Andar, it says, ain't shrichas kavanah, but here you have kavanah not to be yotzei. Since Chazal told us to do it during davening, when you do it outside of davening, it's ki'il kavanah not to be yotzei. And if you turn the page, if you have the Dirshu Mishavura, it's kedai just for this note, if you turn the page, all the way at the bottom, note number 12, he brings this into Sfiyas Omer, he says as follows. It's really a Bir Halacha in Hilchas Sfiyas Omer, which I looked up. V'chein le'inyan mi she'rogel lispor Sfiyas Omer bizmana. A person who is super makbet to count Sfira after Tzeitzak Achavim. He mamish waits 72 minutes every night to count Sfira. And his friend asks him, Bein Hashmashos, what night is tonight? And everyone knows the famous halacha, you should say last night was such and such. But says the Bir Halacha, it could be a person who every night counts after 72 minutes. And a person asks him 5 minutes after Shkia, what night is it? And he says, tonight is number 8. So we always say, and the Mishabura, the halacha is, that you can't count anymore with the bracha because you were yotzei your mitzvah. Says the Bir Halacha in Hilchas Sfiyas Omer, it could be that since you always count Svira after the proper Zman, after the latest Zman, so now if someone asks you, it's Ki'ilu you had Das, but Dafka not to be Yotzei. Just like he's saying over here about Birchas Kohanim, when we give our friends or our children a bracha, out of the regular time that we normally do it, that Chazal set up for us, it's Ki'ilu we have Kavanah not to be Yotzei, so too by Sfiras Omer, if someone asks you Ben Hashmashas, and you always count Svira much later, that would be considered as if you have Das, but Dafka not to be Yotzei. Let's finish up the Mishavuras in this halacha. Weiter in the Mishavuras of Kotan Dalid. We said in the Ramah that a Zar should not do Nesias Kapayim, even with other Kohanim. Rotzalomra afilu in name of Dasei eino over Hazar kashem mevarach im Kohanim. Even if you want to say that there's no Isra Asei if he's doing it together with the Kohanim, Dehamiut atem velo zarim hu rak kashem mevarach levado, because maybe you'll understand the Isra of atem velo zarim is only when you're doing it by yourself. Afilu hachi al kol panim asr mishum habracha shem mevarach betchila. Still it's asr mitzad the bracha that you're saying Asher Kedishanu. Tahavi levatala, if you're not a Kohen, you can't say a bracha levatala of Asher Kedishanu. It's not true. The rak lekohanim tzivsa Torah levarachas Yisrael. Only the Kohanim were commanded to bless Klal Yisrael, not a Jew, not a Yisrael. And therefore, even if you want to say that you're not over the actual Isra Aseh we've been discussing till now, when you're with Kohanim together, still you're doing a bracha levatala, and that's still a problem. And then the Ramah told us that from the Tosas and Shabbos, lo yoda rima Isra yesh, bizarre. So says the Mishmur and Sefkot and Hey, im lo mishum bracha levatala. He doesn't know what Isra there is besides the bracha levatala. Shelo Kohanim tzivsa Torah levarachas Yisrael, because only the Kohanim were commanded to bless Klal Yisrael and not the Yisraelim. And the Ramah ended off and said, ve'esher de'im Kohanim acherim shari v'tzarachiyin. It could be that with other Kohanim it's mutter and tzarachiyin, meaning it's mutter, as the Mishmur will explain now. Mitzad the Isra say it's mutter, but mitzad the bracha levatala it's certainly not mutter. That's what the Mishabura says over here in Sivkot and Vav. He says ve'efsher de'im rotzalomra means to say bezeh ka'amar hari de'eino over ba'asei. That's what the Ri and Tosas means when he says not over the Isra asay. Rak mishum Isra bracha levatala. You'll only be over the Isra of the bracha levatala, not the Isra asay. Uladina halach lemaisa eskimu hachronim de'ein lechalik bazeh. The achronim come out not to be lechalik b'chol gavni over b'asei, and either way lemaisa you are over in asei, whether there are other kohanim there or there are no kohanim. Either way, Yisrael goes up to duchen. According to most posting, when the Mishabura is coming out, there would be an Isra asei of atem v'lo zarim. In the remaining minute and a half, so let's just see one more small bir halacha that I skipped. The only one that I skipped, the ein lazar. Going on that which the Ramah said, a zar should not do in the Siyas Kapayim, I am the pri megadim shehiskim lepri chadash, the cholol she'olu l'duchen over ba'asei kimo zar. It's not only this Isra Aseh applying to a non-Kohen, also a Kohen who is a cholol. His mother was a grusha, whatever it was, he's a apostle Kohen. He also is included in the Isra Aseh of atem v'lo zarim. Va'afilum olo yerid. Even if he goes up, he sits down. If he realizes a mistake. Umishu tumtum or androgynous, lo yalo l'duchen, a tumtum or androgynous, who either has covered simanim, of whether he's a male or female, or androgynous, he has both simanim, so that person should not go up to duchen. Duchening is only for men, not for women. These people are a suffix, and therefore they should not duchen. V'nirli di yetzim veis haknesses kodem ritzei. Says the Chavetz Chaim, to avoid the suffix altogether, they really should leave the shul before ritzei. We'll get more into that idea of leaving the shul before ritzei in the coming sifim. We'll stop here, and we'll continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, in Sif Beis.
You have been listening to a shiur from shasilluminated.org. For other shiurim on many topics, or to hear an Iyun shiur on any daf in Shas, including Mara Mekaymas on each shiur, please visit www.shasilluminated.org. To order CDs or for more information, please call 203-312-SHAS. That's 203-312-7427, or email info@shasilluminated.org.